Mr. DJ back on the countdown. Took a couple of days doing some research on this record at number 21. Up 10 from 31, The Police with Synchronicity II is from the album Synchronicity. And third single off the album, the first record was Every Breath You Take. That was the first single in the spring of 83, late winter, spring of 83. And then there was King of Pain. Anybody remember King of Pain? One of the best records, a satisfying record to listen to, particularly when Sting sings almost a cappella in certain parts of the record. Oh, when at certain parts of the first of the record, King of Pain, and then we got an arena-sized rock and roll record, Synchronicity II. Should have done a lot better on Billboard's Hot 100. Went to number 17 on Billboard. Number 16 on Billboard. In England, didn't do much better. Went to number 17 in England. Some respectable chart positions, no doubt about it. Making top 20 is no small beans, but compared to, say, number 1 with Every Breath You Take, and Wrapped Around Your Finger was the fourth single off the Synchronicity album by the Police. And the video, I was going to talk about the video, but then I started reading about what the song lyrics meant, and I want to read you a few of the song lyrics later on. Talk a little bit about the meaning of the record. The video, though, just want to mention that the video was directed by Godley and Cream. Gosh, innovative video directors back in the 80s. Remember, they had a song of their own. Remember the song Cry, Makes You Want to Cry, or back in around the spring, maybe the summer of 85. Remember the video with the faces, lots of faces of different ethnic groups, different races, and gender, just dissolving and then going into another face and then dissolving into another face. It was just a brilliant technique. And they directed this video. Synchronicity II, they directed Every Breath You Take, directed Rocket, another innovative video by Herbie Hancock back in 1984. You might remember Godley and Cream from back in the days when they were in 10cc, and maybe few of you might be old enough to remember when they were in a sort of a one-off band of sorts called Hot Legs. They had that one-hit wonder in the summer of 1970 called the Neanderthal Man, and, which was basically a drum experiment that got put out as a single. And it went top 10 in England, top 30 here in the States, and then 10cc, Hot Legs evolved into 10cc. Sting, boy, he's written some brilliant records. Now, I have to admit, at times I found him maybe a little bit intellectually pretentious, but looking back on it, he had every right to be. He wrote some deep lyrics and was absolutely commercial at the same time. The guy was sometimes a genius at lyric writing. Well, here's the deal. First off, he wrote this song. You won't believe where he wrote this song at. He wrote a lot of the songs to Synchronicity at a place called Golden Eye, Ian Fleming's estate in Jamaica. Ian Fleming, the guy who wrote the James Bond novels. And that's what happens when you become famous. When you become a famous rock and roll star, iconic rock star, a superstar, boy, all kinds of doors. You wouldn't believe the doors that open up for you. Success breeds success and breeds success. And we're not even talking about just breeding success. We're talking about breeding success exponentially. You become famous, you get the right songs in famous people's houses. Get a little bit of creative spurs, creative stimulation. Sting was reading a lot of Carl Jung, the psychologist, and got into the concept of synchronicity. Let me read you a definition of synchronicity that I came across online. I'll do the quote unquote so I won't get into any trouble. Quote, here's the definition of synchronicity: a meaningful coincidence of two or more events where something other than the probability of chance is involved. And that was Carl Jung's sort of his explanation of the paranormal, and it feeds into this record. We have a guy, the industrial heartland, the morbid industrial heartland of England, A guy whose family situation is descending into chaos, one cauldron of chaos, his family. And his work situation is not much better. He hates his boss, he hates his life. It's a futile existence. His mind, he's given away to despair. He's given away to paranoia. And at the same time, Sting draws that synchronicity to the Loch Ness monster, slithering at the bottom of Loch Ness or whatever that lake is called, and eventually it will rise. Like the man's temper will rise. He will have a meltdown. Let me go into the lyrics of the record. Let me read you a few of the lyrics. Bear with me. Here we go. Mother chants her litany of boredom and frustration, but we know all her suicides are fake. Daddy only stares into the distance. There's only so much more that he can take. Many miles away, here comes the synchronicity, here comes the metaphor. Many miles away, something crawls from the slime at the bottom of a dark Scottish lake. That's his anger, that's his futility, that's his sense of hopelessness that's rising, that will eventually possibly lead to a meltdown. Another industrial quote unquote. I forgot to do the quote unquote when I read the definition of synchronicity, but I'll try to do the quote unquote here. Another industrial ugly morning. The factory belches filth into the sky. He walks unhindered through the picket lines today. He doesn't think to wonder why. I love this line right here. The secretaries pout and preen like cheap tarts in a red light street, but all he ever thinks to do is watch, and every single meeting with his so-called superior is a humiliating kick in the crotch. Here comes the metaphor. Here comes the synchronicity. Many miles away, something crawls to the surface of a dark Scottish loch. And here comes that Loch Ness monster. It's rising. His anger, his futility. Here comes the synchronicity rising to the surface. And let me read you one more verse because I'm getting on a roll now. Here we go. Daddy grips the wheel. He's going home. He's going home from work. Daddy grips the wheel and stares alone into the distance. Alone into the distance. He knows that something somewhere has to break. He's at the breaking point. He's at the melting point. He sees the family home now, looming in his headlights. The pain upstairs that makes his eyeballs ache. And there's a sense that if he opens the door, he's going to cut loose. Many miles away, there's a shadow on the door of a cottage on the shore of a dark Scottish lake. Daddy's having a meltdown. It's kind of like the Loch Ness monster just blowing right out of the lake, just coming right out of the lake and terrorizing a village. Boy, talk about, gosh, man, let me tell you something. This is genius. It is sheer genius. We are talking about the cerebral meeting the market. I can't put it poetically. The cerebral meeting, it's just meeting rock and roll. The cerebral going into the rock and roll vortex. This is kind of similar to what the Beatles did sometimes in the '60s, and particularly Simon and Garfunkel. Actually, I just ruined the video. I only got a few hours of sleep last night, so I got an excuse. Boy, oh boy. Anything else I need to mention about this song? I think I've covered all the basics on this record. Chart positions, Godly and Cream. That was a brilliant video that they directed too. This is just all out genius. All out genius poured into this record. Police. Rock and roll. It's just a great rock and roll record. That's the bottom line. Synchronicity II at number 21 on my fancy playlist, November 20th, 1983.